Hello everyone. Today we are going to solve Feb March 2025 MCQ extended paper. So let's start. So for the first question, the diagram shows containers of gas at the same temperature. All containers have same size. Which container contains gas at the highest pressure? Okay, so if you observe all the options A, B, C and D, A is having more number of gas particles. More the number of gas particles, more they collide and more is the pressure. So the answer is A. For the second one, a cooling curve for a substance is shown. Which statement is correct? So first of all, when you observe the cooling curve, you should know that the area between U and V is gas, the area between W and X is liquid, and the area between Y and Z is solid. So first, between U and V, the substance is condensing. Between U and V, it is gas. It is condensing actually between V and W. Between V and W, heat is being absorbed from the surroundings. We have to understand that it is a cooling curve. So heat cannot be absorbed, heat is released instead. Between W and X, the particles are close together and randomly arranged. So yes, between W and X, the substance is converted into liquid, and the liquid having particles which are close together, and definitely they do not have a specific arrangement, they are randomly arranged. Next, sample of 4 gases are released in a room at the same time. The gases are carbon dioxide, hydrogen chloride, hydrogen sulfide and nitrogen dioxide. Which gas diffuses faster? For this, you will have to find the molecular mass of all the gases given, and the one with the lowest MR will diffuse fast. So here I have calculated the MR for all of them, and I have got the least molecular mass for hydrogen sulfide, that is 34. Sulfur atoms can form negative ions, which is S2 minus. 3 other atoms or ions are listed, that is argon, calcium and oxide. How many of these atoms or ions have the same electronic configuration of sulfur? Now S2 minus, that is after accepting electrons, if we consider the electronic configuration, it is 288. We have to find out that out of all the argon, calcium and oxide, which of them are resembling to the same electronic configuration. As we have to find out that which of these given are having the same electronic configuration as that of sulfur, so you can see that I have written the electronic configuration according to the ions or atoms given here, and you can see that only argon matches to the electronic configuration given to sulfur, and hence it is only B. Next, element T has 2 isotopes. Which statement about these isotopes is correct? They have different chemical properties because they have different number of neutrons. So isotopes always have similar chemical properties because the number of electrons remains same, only neutrons are different. They have same chemical properties because they have same number of outer shell electrons. That reason is correct. So B is the correct answer. Lithium is in group 1 of the periodic table. Nitrogen is in group 5 of the periodic table. Lithium reacts with nitrogen to form ionic compound lithium nitride Li3N. What happens to the electrons when lithium atoms and nitrogen atoms form ions? Each lithium atom loses 1 electron to form an Li plus ion. So lithium is from group 1 of periodic table, and we know that group 1 are metals and nitrogen is a non-metal. So lithium will definitely lose an electron from its outer shell, and nitrogen has to accept the electrons. Now as we know that nitrogen requires 3 electrons, okay, and also the formula is given to us here. So each nitrogen atoms are going to accept 3 electrons, okay, from lithium, and hence A is the correct answer. For which covalent compound does the dot and cross diagram correctly shows the outer shell electrons? So here they have given us two compounds, HCl and NH3. For first one, that is A, you can see that they have shown an extra pair of electrons on hydrogen, which is totally wrong, as hydrogen has only one electron in its outer shell. Similarly, B also goes wrong because hydrogen has only one electron in outer shell, which it is sharing with chlorine already. Okay, so A and B are totally wrong. Next comes our C, which is ammonia. So here you can see that nitrogen and hydrogen are sharing electrons, and nitrogen contains a pair of electron. Okay, so this structure is totally correct. Even D would be correct, but there are no lone pair of electrons shown on nitrogen. Which row identifies the positive and the negative particles present in a giant metallic lattice? So, when we talk about metallic lattice, metal bonding is when there are positive ions surrounded by delocalized electron. Okay, so the positive particles will be cations and the negative particles are the electrons itself and not anions. Students usually get confused in ionic bonding and metallic bonding. In ionic bonding, we have a cation and an anion which is bonded together, and in metal bonding, we have positive ions which are bonded to delocalized electrons. So electrons become the negative particles here. Which formula for the named compound is correct? So we have calcium oxide. So first we'll try to form calcium and oxygen. Calcium is from group 2 and oxygen is from group 6, which also requires 2 more electrons to complete its outer shell. So we'll write 2. Here we cross multiply. The 2 gets cancelled and our formula becomes calcium oxide, CaO, which is correct. For cobalt chloride, cobalt 2 chloride, you can see the oxidation state of cobalt is already given, so it is cobalt, and chlorine 2 is already given. Chlorine is from group 7 and it requires only one electron to complete its outer shell. So 1 we are going to write here. We will cross multiply and we should get COCl2, but here we have CO2Cl, which is wrong. For sulfur dioxide, you can see we have one sulfur atom and di, meaning 2 oxygen atoms. So SO2 becomes the formula. And lastly, we have anhydrous copper sulfate. So the formula for copper sulfate is CuSO4. Okay. Next, the equation for the reaction of magnesium with dilute sulfuric acid is shown. Which mass of magnesium sulfate is formed when 12 grams of magnesium completely react with dilute sulfuric acid? You can see that they have already given you MR of magnesium sulfate and they are asking us that what will be the mass of magnesium sulfate formed when magnesium is reacting with sulfuric acid. So they have already given us mass of magnesium. Okay, so we are going to first find moles of magnesium. So moles of Mg, which will be equal to 12 by 24, which is equal to 0.5. Okay, now you can see that we have no stoichiometric coefficient present in front of magnesium and magnesium sulfate, which is a 1:1 ratio. Okay, so whatever are moles of magnesium, same will be the moles of magnesium sulfate also. So simply to find the mass of magnesium sulfate, we are just going to multiply moles into MR, which is equal to 0.5, and this MR is already given, which is 120, and hence the correct option is C. An organic compound Q contains carbon, hydrogen and oxygen only. Q contains 40% carbon and 6.7% hydrogen by mass. What is the empirical formula of Q? In the question, you can see they have mentioned 3 different elements: carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, and they have given us the percentage of carbon and hydrogen only. So first of all, we are going to find the percentage of oxygen. So we are supposed to add the percentage of carbon and hydrogen, which becomes 46.7, and subtract it from 100. So we are going to get 53.3, which is the percentage of oxygen. Now we are supposed to divide all the percentages given by the respective atomic mass of the element. We are going to get a value that is 3.33, 6.7 for hydrogen, and 3.33 again for oxygen. Out of all the three values, 3.33 is the only smallest value. We will use the same value and divide it with all the other values, okay, all the three values, and again we are going to get a number. You can see that all the three numbers we have got are whole numbers, that is 1, 2.0 and 1, and hence our empirical formula becomes CH2O, which is option B. The value of Avogadro constant is 6.02 into 10 raised to 23. What is the total number of moles of atoms in 2 moles of ammonia gas? So now here moles are already given, and they are asking us to find out the number of atoms that this much moles, that is 2 moles of ammonia, will have. So we should know the formula of ammonia, that is NH3, and you can see that I have one nitrogen atom and 3 hydrogen atoms. So in total in ammonia I have 4 atoms, that is 1 nitrogen plus 3 hydrogen. Okay, so now I'm simply supposed to multiply 2 moles into 4 atoms, which is going to give me 8, and 8 into the Avogadro constant. So this is how I'm going to get my answer. So the answer here is C. Three aqueous solutions L, M and N are electrolyzed using inert electrodes. L is concentrated hydrochloric acid, M is concentrated aqueous sodium chloride, N is dilute aqueous sodium chloride. Which solutions produce a pale yellow green gas at the anode? Now first of all, pale yellow green gas is the color of chlorine gas. Okay, now I have written the formulas of all the three L, M and N here, and I have to find out that where I am going to get chlorine as a product. So L is a concentrated hydrochloric acid, and yes, whenever I have a concentrated solution and I perform its electrolysis, I always get halogens at anode. So in HCl I will get chlorine at anode. Second is concentrated aqueous sodium chloride. Again it is a concentrated solution, and hence I will get chlorine, that is a halogen, at anode. Last one is dilute aqueous sodium chloride. In dilute solutions, even if there is presence of halogen, we still get oxygen as a product, and we are not going to get an halogen at anode. So the correct option is only L and M. Dilute sulfuric acid is electrolyzed using inert electrodes. What are the ionic half equations for the reactions that take place at each electrode? As I told you in the earlier question also, that whenever we have a dilute aqueous solutions, okay, here we have dilute H2SO4. Now here we do not have any halogen present in this formula, so it becomes easy to identify. We always get oxygen as a product at anode, and we don't have any metal also here, and hence hydrogen is the only product that we are going to get at cathode. Okay, so at positive electrode, that is my anode, I'm going to get oxygen, and the correct half ionic equation will be 4OH minus, giving me water, oxygen and 4 electrons. And my negative electrode, that is cathode, is going to give me hydrogen, that is 2H plus 2 electrons is going to give me hydrogen. Which statements about hydrogen oxygen fuel cells are correct? They convert chemical energy into electrical energy. So yes, because the name itself tells that they act as a fuel cell, so hence they convert chemical energy into electrical energy. Hydrogen is reduced in the fuel cells. No, it is being oxidized. They do not produce any atmospheric pollutants. That is true, because hydrogen oxygen fuel cells only produces water and heat. There is no carbon dioxide or monoxide produced here. So option 1 and 3 are correct. The reaction pathway diagram for the reaction between P and Q to form R and S is shown. Which letter represents the enthalpy change for the reaction? So here they have given us an energy profile diagram for an endothermic reaction, because the reactants are at a lower level and the products are at a higher level, and they are asking us to find out the enthalpy change of the reaction, that is delta H, and delta H is represented by the difference between the reactants and the products, which is by letter C. The equation for the complete combustion of methane is shown. So here they have given you the chemical equation as well as the bond energies are given, and we have to find the enthalpy change for the reaction. So first of all, we will calculate the bond breaking. You can see I have CH4 and oxygen as my product. Okay, so in CH4 I have 4 bonds. 4 CH bonds I have, so I will multiply 4 into 410. Okay, and in oxygen I have O double bond O, and I have 2 oxygen here, so it will be 2 into 496. So we'll just calculate the total. 4 into 410 gives me 1640, and 496 into 2 gives me 992. So 1640 plus 992 gives me 2632. Now bond forming. So in CO2 the bonding goes like this: C double bond O double bond O. I have total 2 CO bonds, so 2 into C double bond O is 805, and in water I have HOH, so again I have 1 and 2 OH bonds, and I have 2 molecules of H2O. Okay, so 2 OH bonds into 2 is equal to 4. Okay, because I have 2 molecules, so OH is equal to 4 into 460. So we'll multiply 2 into 805 is 1610, and 4 into 460 is 1840. So 1610 plus 1840 is giving me 3450. Now my delta H is equal to BB minus BF, which is equal to 2632 minus 3450. Which gives me minus 818 kilojoules per mole. Next, which change is a physical change? Cracking and alkane. So even if the word is cracking, it does not literally means that. It is like dividing the alkane into smaller particles or small chain alkanes by using a catalyst, okay, and which is a reaction basically. So it is not a physical change. Second is evaporating ethanol. Yes, evaporation is a physical change, that is changing from a liquid to gas directly. Fermenting glucose and neutralizing an acid are again chemical reactions. Which statements explain why increasing the temperature in a reaction involving gases increases the rate of reaction? It increases the collision frequency between the gas particles, which is very simple, that whenever we increase temperature, the kinetic energy of the particle increases, and hence the collision is also going to increase. It lowers the activation energy. No. It increases the kinetic energy of the gas particles. Yes. When the kinetic energy increases, the particles move faster, and hence the collision increases. It increases the number of gas particles per unit volume. By increasing temperature, the number of particles which are present are never going to increase. The energy of the particles will increase. So 1 and 3 are the correct options. The equation for the reaction between ammonia and oxygen is shown. They have also provided you with the delta H value, which two changes to the reaction conditions will both move the position of equilibrium to right hand side. We want that the equilibrium position should move to right hand side. Okay, they have given us temperature and pressure. So first we have to understand what is our forward reaction. You can see the delta H value is minus 909. Whenever the delta H value is in negative, meaning the forward reaction is exothermic, and hence the backward will become endothermic in nature. Now, whenever we have a forward reaction and we want that our yield increases, for that we have to decrease the temperature. Okay, so we have options C and D for that. Now, whenever we want more yield, so we need to increase the pressure, but we have to always look at the number of moles. So when we increase the pressure, it should move to the side where there are few number of moles. So we will count the number of moles here. We have 4 moles of NH3 and 5 moles of oxygen, which is total 9 moles. And in my product side, I have 4 moles of NO and 6 moles of water, which becomes total 10 moles. Now, if I increase my pressure, it will move to the side where there are few number of moles. Okay, so few number of moles are at LHS, that is reactant side. I don't want my equilibrium to shift towards reactant side. I want it to shift towards my product side, and hence I'm going to decrease the pressure. Whenever we decrease the pressure, it shifts towards the side where there are more number of moles, and my more number of moles are on right hand side, and hence I need to decrease the pressure also. So we have to decrease the temperature and the pressure, and that is why option D is the correct answer. Mercury 2 oxide decomposes when heated. The equation is shown. Why is this a reduction reaction? You can see that it is a very simple reaction where mercury oxide is being decomposing to give you mercury and oxygen. There are no other reactants or products which are involved here. Okay, and you can see that the mercury formed is totally uncombined and in its elemental form. You can see that in the reactant side, mercury was combined with oxygen, and now in the product side, it is not combined with oxygen. You can say that it is a loss of oxygen, and hence it is a reduction reaction. Some information about 2 dilute acids is shown. So they have given us nitric acid with its concentration and pH value. Same with propanoic acid, its concentration and pH value. 3 statements about the acids are listed. Nitric acid has a lower pH because it dissociates more than propanoic acid. We have to understand that nitric acid is a strong acid, and propanoic acid is an example of weak acid. So strong acids always completely dissociate into ions, and there are more number of H plus ions available, because of which we have lower pH. So A1 is correct. Propanoic acid has a lower concentration of hydrogen ions than that of nitric acid, which is true, because it is a weak acid and it is partially dissociating into ions. Propanoic acid has a higher pH because it has a higher concentration, which is wrong. Okay, lower the pH, stronger is the acid. So only 1 and 2 statements are correct here. Element E is a metal in group 1 of the periodic table, and element G is a non-metal in group 7. Both of these elements form oxides. Which statement about their oxides is correct? So first the element E is from group 1, which is a metal, and element G is a non-metal, which is already mentioned in the question. Okay, now both oxides are acidic. Both oxides cannot be acidic in nature, okay, because one is a metal and the other one is a non-metal oxide. Metal oxides are basic in nature and non-metal oxides are acidic in nature. Both oxides are basic, again that is not possible. The oxide of E is acidic and the oxide of G is basic. Because element E is a metal, it will form an basic oxide, and option C cannot be correct in that case. So option D, the oxide of G is acidic, which is correct because it is a non-metal and non-metal oxides are acidic in nature, and oxide E is basic in nature. Lead 2 sulfate is an insoluble salt. Which method is suitable for obtaining pure solid lead 2 crystals? Sorry, lead 2 sulfate. Now, they have clearly mentioned that lead 2 sulfate is an insoluble salt. You should remember that insoluble salts are always made by the method that is precipitation. So we'll read the options. Mix aqueous lead 2 nitrate and aqueous potassium sulfate. Heat to evaporate all the water, collect the solid and then wash and dry it. Now the reactants which are used, lead 2 nitrate and aqueous potassium sulfate, may be correct, but the method which is shown here is not correct. Mix aqueous lead 2 nitrate and aqueous potassium sulfate, filter, collect the filtrate, crystallize, then wash and dry the crystals. Again in B they have used the same reactants, but the method shown is not correct because precipitation is a different method. You do not need to crystallize that salt. Mix aqueous lead 2 nitrate and dilute sulfuric acid, filter, then wash and dry the residue. For the fourth one, titrate aqueous lead 2 hydroxide with dilute sulfuric acid, crystallize, then wash and dry the crystals. Now in case of option D, if you see, they are suggesting titration, which is totally not possible because the reactant which is shown here, lead 2 hydroxide, is an insoluble reactant. For titration we require two soluble reactants, that is an alkali and an acid, and here they have mentioned that the product is an insoluble salt. So we have identified that it is going to happen with precipitation, so titration is definitely not going to come. So option C is correct, where we always mix two soluble aqueous solutions and we just mix them, then when they react we just filter them out, and the product which we get is the residue. We just have to rinse the residue and dry that. Question 25. The element oxygen and sulfur are in same group of the periodic table. Which statement about oxygen and sulfur is not correct? They are non-metals. It is true, sulfur and oxygen both are non-metals. They have giant covalent structures. No, they do not have giant covalent structures. They have 6 electrons in the outer electron shells of their atoms. Because they are present in group 6, they have 6 electrons in their outer shell. They react together to form an acidic oxide, which is true. Sulfur is a non-metal, and non-metals, when they react with oxygen, they form acidic oxides. So all the other options are correct. Option B is not correct. Tennessine is at bottom of group 7 of periodic table. What are the predicted properties of tennessine at room temperature? A black solid more dense than iodine, a black solid more reactive than iodine, a colorless gas less dense than chlorine, a colorless gas less reactive than chlorine. Here for group 7 you have to remember the trends in group 7. Okay, so for group 7 we have to remember that reactivity decrease down the group, So here these are some trends that the reactivity is going to decrease as we go down the group. The physical state changes from gas to solid and color also becomes darker. So tennessine, as it is the, as they have told, it is at bottom of the periodic table, okay, bottom of the group, so it must be a solid, okay. Second thing is the color. So the color becomes darker and darker, so it is at the bottom, hence it will be dark, and the physical state will be solid, okay. When it comes to reactivity, so as we go down the group, reactivity is decreasing and hence it will be less reactive than iodine and also more dense because it is in solid state. So it is a black solid more dense than iodine is correct. An example of sacrificial protection is the fitting of zinc blocks to outside of a ship's steel hull. Which statement explains why zinc is used to protect the iron in the steel from rusting? Zinc is more reactive than iron, so it loses electrons more readily, which is correct. In sacrificial protection and in galvanization, both the cases we use zinc and magnesium, okay. Why we use them? Because they both are more reactive than iron and they both can donate its electrons and gets oxidized in to protect iron. Which statement about alloys is correct? Alloys are harder than pure metals because they contain strong intermolecular forces. The first half of the statement is definitely correct, but they do not contain strong intermolecular forces, they contain electrostatic forces. Brass is an alloy containing mainly copper and tin. No, brass is made up of copper and zinc. The different sized atoms in an alloy mean that layers cannot slide over each other easily. There are no alloys containing carbon because carbon is a non-metal. There are alloys that contain carbon. Steel is an example of an alloy where iron is combined with carbon. And the option C, where the different sized atoms in an alloy does not allow the layers to slide over each other and hence the alloys are more harder and stronger than the original metal, which is correct. Separate pieces of aluminium oil and copper foil are heated in air. The copper foil reacts to give a black solid. Aluminium foil does not react. Which statement explains these observations? Aluminium has an unreactive layer, but copper does not. Aluminium is below copper in the reactivity series, which is wrong. Aluminium is above copper in the reactivity series. Copper reacts with moisture in the air, but aluminium does not. Copper reacts with nitrogen in the air, but aluminium does not. Copper is an unreactive element and is only reacting with oxygen and not with acids or cold water, okay. And copper, because it is less reactive and comes below carbon and any other metal, it can be easily displaced by any other metal. In case of aluminium, aluminium is having a protective oxide layer on itself and hence it is unreactive and does not rust easily. So option A is correct. Which row gives the symbol equation for the formation of carbon monoxide and for the reduction of iron 3 oxide in a blast furnace? So, for the formation of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide needs to react with more carbon to give you carbon monoxide. And in case of reduction of iron 3 oxide needs to react with carbon monoxide to give you iron and carbon dioxide. So here option D is the correct answer. A sample of river water contains a high concentration of nitrates from fertilizers. Which statement about the river water are correct? It has a boiling point of 100 degrees Celsius. Its melting point is below 0 degrees Celsius. It turns anhydrous cobalt chloride from pink to blue. It turns anhydrous copper sulfate from white to blue. Now, it has a boiling point of 100 degrees Celsius. So whenever there is any impurities present in water, boiling point will increase. So first is not correct. Its melting point is below 0 degrees Celsius. yes, the melting point decreases whenever there is any kind of impurity present. It turns anhydrous cobalt chloride from pink to blue. First of all, anhydrous cobalt chloride is actually blue in color and it turns blue to pink when water added. So third one is wrong. It turns anhydrous copper sulfate from white to blue. Yeah, that is correct. Anhydrous copper sulfate is white in color and when water is added to it, it turns blue in color. Which statement about the treatment of domestic water supplies are correct? The water undergoes sedimentation to remove dissolved solids. This is totally not possible. The substances which are dissolved, they don't undergo sedimentation. The insoluble particles undergo sedimentation. The water is filtered to remove insoluble solids. Yes, the filtration is performed so that insoluble solids can be removed. The water is treated with carbon to improve the taste. Yeah, that is true. To remove odor and to improve the taste, carbon is added. The water is chlorinated to decrease the pH. The water is not chlorinated to decrease the pH, but it is chlorinated to kill microorganisms. So second and third is the correct answer. An experiment to find the percentage of oxygen in 150 centimeter cube of polluted air is shown. The apparatus is left for 1 week. After this time, the volume of gas is in the measuring cylinder is 122 centimeter cube. What is the percentage of oxygen to the nearest whole number in the polluted air? So here we had total 150 centimeter cube of air, okay, and after the reaction we have 122 centimeter cube remaining. So 150 minus 122 gives me 28 centimeter cube of air. Therefore 28 upon total volume that we had, which is 150 into 100, which gives me 18.6 percentage, and the nearest value to that is 19 percentage. Nitrogen monoxide and carbon monoxide are both removed from the exhaust gases of a car by catalytic converter. Which statement describes how nitrogen monoxide and carbon monoxide are removed by a catalytic converter? So nitrogen monoxide and carbon monoxide, they react with each other. So nitrogen oxide plus carbon monoxide reacts to form nitrogen gas and carbon dioxide. Okay. So nitrogen monoxide and carbon monoxide are both reduced. No, nitrogen is reduced and carbon dioxide is oxidized. So option D is correct here. Next. So you can see here that nitrogen oxide is converted to nitrogen, so it is being reduced, and carbon monoxide is converted to dioxide and hence it is oxidized. Propan 1-ol is oxidized by acidified potassium manganate in a similar way to ethanol. Which compound is produced by the oxidation of propan 1-ol with acidified aqueous potassium manganate? Now, alcohol, when oxidized, gets converted to carboxylic acid. So it is very simple. If I have propan 1-ol, it will get converted into propanoic acid, and hence option D is my correct answer. The structural formula of methyl propane is CH3CH CH3CH3. The equation represents the reaction of methyl propane with chlorine. How many structural isomers with the molecular formula C4H9Cl can be formed from this reaction? So we have to find out that how many different structural isomers can be formed. Okay, so we have C4H9Cl, so we have butane. So I will just draw the structure 1 2 3 4. Now I can put chlorine on first carbon atom. Okay, then I can shift chlorine from first carbon to second carbon atom. Now these are the only two possibilities which I can have. Okay, if in case I put chlorine on the last carbon atom, so if I put chlorine here, this will become my first carbon atom. Okay, so I have only two possibilities, either on the first carbon atom or on the second carbon atom, maybe from right hand side or from the left hand side. It is going to give me these two possibilities only. So I can have only two isomers, structural isomers. Which statement about disadvantages of manufacturing ethanol by fermentation? The process uses a renewable sources, so we have to find the disadvantage, but renewable sources is an advantage here. The process produces impure ethanol, that is a disadvantage because we have dyed yeast also in that and we have to purify the ethanol further. The process requires a higher temperature, which is wrong. We perform fermentation at room temperature around 25 to 35 degrees Celsius. The process is slow. Yes, so that is also a disadvantage here. Okay, so option 2 and 4 are the disadvantages for fermentation process. Nylon is made in a polymerization reaction. Which row describes the type of polymerization and identifies the other product of the reaction? Now nylon is a type of condensation reaction which is made by carboxylic acid and carboxylic acid and diamines. And in a condensation polymerization, one product is polymer and the other product is always water. So C is the correct answer here. Which ion forms a green precipitate with aqueous sodium hydroxide that dissolves in an excess of aqueous sodium hydroxide? Now, here we have 4 different ions which are given, out of which calcium is colorless, it is going to give you white precipitate. Copper is going to give you a blue precipitate. Iron Fe2 plus is going to give you red precipitate, red brown maybe. And we have chromium, so chromium gives you a green precipitate always. A mixture of soluble substances can be separated by paper chromatography. Each substance can be identified using its RF value, which formula shows how the RF value is calculated. We have a simple formula to calculate RF value, that is distance travelled by the solute or the sample or the substance upon distance travelled by the solvent. So B is the only correct formula here.